Week 35. Last week, I started connecting the presentation layer to the data and the domain layers. In other words, up until this moment, the home dashboard has been using fake data, mock data. And now it's time to make the home dashboard display the actual data from the repository. So the waitlist list pane has been hooked up, as well as the add waitlist function. So in other words, the user can see the waitlists that they've created, as well as creating new waitlists. Both the UI elements are done, as well as the necessary backend operations, the data layer, the domain layer. Of course, the backend Supabase database has already been wired up with the proper database schema set up to process and store this type of data. I am in the middle of hooking up the guest list details pane. In other words, the pane that displays the list of guests from the waitlist, from the selected waitlist. So that's in the middle of, I'm in the middle of doing that. Ran into a couple of issues with regards to replacing the old tests that were used to test the mock data display with the actual real tests that I need to write for the actual implementation, the real implementation, right, with the Supabase backend. So that introduced some challenges for me that I'm in the middle of fixing. On top of that, I'm also hooking up the add guest function. In other words, hooking up the UI elements to, again, the layers below. So these two would be the primary focus for next week. And after this, the major UI work and wiring work would be done. So after that, it would be setting up some of the more, I suppose, intricate and more specialized features. For instance, I think I'm probably going to use an edge function for the email send feature and stuff like that. In this version of the MVP, I'm not actually thinking about adding RevenueCat or SMS functionalities. So I'm probably just going to tank the cost with regards to email distribution, but we'll see. So in summary, last week, I started wiring up the presentation layer with the underlying supporting layers. And next week, I'll continue to do that, but for a different part of the UI elements. As usual, the tests are, I think, 90%, 95% line coverage requirement. I'm not loosening on that. In addition to that, I am compiling both for Android and for desktop. I'm not verifying compilation for iOS yet, because I don't want to have to pay the 10 times Mac runners on GitHub. I only have 2,000 minutes every month, and I'm actually running out of them now, given the CI/CD tasks that I have. So I'll worry about iOS compilation a little down the line. Maybe that'll come back and bite me, but now I'm just not going to think about it. That's it for this week. I'll see you next week.